Happy New Year and welcome in, Whiskey Freaks, to the Blind Tasting Podcast, Splash and Dash Edition, where I skip a lot of the BS and most of my shenanigans, and I get to analyzing and blind tasting bourbons or whiskeys that I hope I'll like, but most importantly, I really hope you'll like them too. I'm kicking off the brand new year here with a bang today, but first I need to tell you just exactly how grateful I am for your listenership. I want to give a couple special shout outs here today to the St. Louis Bourbon Society, to the Metro East Bourbon Society, to Charlie, to Matt, to Jeffrey, many, many others. I've got folks all over the world listening. It's amazing, and I really appreciate it. Guys, without y'all, I'm just talking into the wind, and it means a lot when y'all tune in. And speaking of the wind is blowing 25 miles an hour outside the house right now. I'm in the bunker, but you may be able to hear some wind. Sorry about that. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe everywhere, because the pod is literally everywhere, from Apple to YouTube to iHeart to Spotify. Like and subscribe on all of the platforms for me. Mash those buttons. Do all the things. I don't know how the damn algorithm works. I just know it's angry, it's unpredictable, and it must be fed, or it buries me under cat videos and Sydney Sweeney reels. And I gotta say, Happy New Year, guys. Hoping all y'all have an amazing new year. 2026 is going to be a great year, I hope. And hopefully, Santa brought you a bottle of Pappy, or maybe Old Fitz 13, or maybe a William LaRue Weller, or, well, hell, maybe he just brought you a bottle of Mellow Corn. Either way, I wish y'all a very happy new year. Oh, and one more housekeeping item before I get into this Splash and Dash episode. I'm going to be dropping another super exciting episode. You are going to want to tune into this next one. So subscribe wherever you can. Subscribe everywhere you can. Look, I found something I love and I want to talk about it next time. And what that translates is to, I'm either totally brilliant or it's going to be a complete disaster. I think it's going to be amazing. Either way, you're going to want to hear it. So tune in, subscribe, do the things. And I've got an interview coming up that's pretty badass. So there's that. Let me ask you all a question. Does more Blantons actually make Blantons better? Now, when I say does more Blantons actually make Blantons better, what I mean is does higher proof, does a rarer product, a more expensive version of that same bourbon, does that automatically equal a better drinking experiences? Regular Blantons, it's the baseline in people's mind, right? And that means Blanton's Gold and Straight from the Barrel are literally more Blantons. Right? You got more proof, you got more scarcity, and you're going to pay a lot more money. And lots of folks, maybe not whiskey freaks, but lots of bourbon drinkers out there, the whiskey culture, the enthusiasts, right? I gotta hate when they say geeks. That's so stupid. Whatever. The assumption is that all of that should equal better bourbon. And I guess what I'm really asking is that actually true once the labels and all the hype are put aside? So today, we're going to do nothing but bourbony goodness. Now, you know that's a given, right, guys? But we're also going to do an actual blind tasting between, wait for it, Blanton's Gold and Blanton's Straight from the Barrel. Oh yeah, baby. It is on. Now, you know my goal here. At least one of my goals is to review stuff you can find and get your hands on, and stuff you can actually afford. Well, then there's today. I'm kind of thinking outside the box today, so to speak, or at least I'm breaking my credo here. And I think sometimes you got to review hard to find bourbons as well. And there are few bourbons out there that are as hard to find as these two. I'm trying to keep it interesting, guys. So today, I think we're going to hit the mark by just reviewing some of this tough to find and pretty damn expensive bourbon from our good friends at Buffalo Trace. Now, every time I say Blantons, people pay attention. They lose it, really. Oh my God, Blantons. You know John Wick drinks Blantons, right? Yeah, I know, guys. But John Wick also gets shot at a lot, so there's that. So, should you drink Blantons? There's that wind. Holy shit. I want to know if you should drink Blantons. That's the real question. And if you do, is it worth it to pay that damn much for it? So today we're keeping it short. Okay, it's not really going to be that short. I am going to keep it honest, though, and I'm going to keep it blind today. We are doing a legit blind tasting. It's going to be a head-to-head between Blanton's Gold versus Blanton's Straight from the Barrel. There's no labels, there's no hype, just what's in my two glasses here. And you're going to get my honest opinion, as always. Now, you know I like to give 2 minutes of history before we dive into the tasting, and so I want to set the table today, and like I always say on here, you might just learn something while we're at it. So listen up. Today is going to be no exception. So before we dive into today's tasting, let's talk about how Blanton's actually came to be. Blanton's single barrel bourbon first hit the scene way back in, probably before a lot of you guys were born, back in 1984, and that was thanks to master distiller Elmer T. Lee. And I really want to get my hands on some Elmer T. Lee. You can't find it for less than $300 here in town. Anyway, I digress. So he was nearing retirement. So Elmer T. Lee, he wanted to make something really special before he left Buffalo Trace. Now, he looked back at his early days working under Colonel Albert Blanton. And Colonel Blanton ran the distillery for decades and had this tradition of hand-picking the coveted, what he called honey barrels from the center of Warehouse H. Now, pay attention to Warehouse H. That's where he grabbed barrels for important guests and dignitaries. And for those of you with infinity bottles, dignitaries means important people drinking bourbon. So Colonel Blanton, he served these honey barrels to those dignitaries, and the coolest part was he bottled those bottles one barrel at a time. So here we are, and Elmer T. Lee then borrowed that idea when he created Blanton's single barrel back in 1984, and the first super premium single barrel bourbon in the world was born. That was a pretty radical move at the time, and it just goes to show sometimes paying attention to the old school ways, but adding a little personal flair to the situation can actually be a game changer. Now, quick note about Warehouse H. After Prohibition, they were ramping up production again there at the distillery, and so space was tight. So Colonel Blanton, he built a metal warehouse in 1935 to store barrels. You can see it there. While you're standing in the snakes in the parking lot at Buffalo Trace, it is literally right there. You can throw a rock at it. Don't throw a rock at it, but you could. Now, the thinner walls there in the metal warehouse meant the bourbon aged differently, and it reacts more to Kentucky's crazy seasonal swings. And we know all about that here in St. Louis. A lot of you across the country may not know that Kentucky has that same kind of, they have 4 seasons every year. It's really hot in the summer. It gets really cold in the winter. So you're soaking up all the 4 seasons in that barrel. Now that's still where Blanton's barrels live today. And that's where they only live, is Warehouse H. And it makes you realize sometimes thinking outside the box, or in this case, thinking outside the brick, well, it can pay off. And Elmer T. Lee's story gets even more inspiring. You're thinking, wow, how could it be more inspirational, right? Well, it is. He served in World War II, which is awesome. And after he served in World War II, he came back to Kentucky. He joined the distillery as a maintenance engineer. And he worked his way up to master distiller. Sounds a lot like what Jimmy Russell did at Wild Turkey, doesn't it? Now, he eventually worked his way up the chain to overseeing production, and he proves that anybody can climb the ladder if you combine hustle, loyalty, and respect. And that is my shout out to John Cena. That match was bullshit. That's all I'm going to say about it. No more rant. You guys are welcome. Anyway, Elmer T. Lee's innovations, they shaped the bourbon industry, and he earned a spot in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame, along with a couple Lifetime Achievement Awards, yada, yada, yada. Now, Colonel Blanton himself started as a 16-year-old office boy, and he eventually ran the whole distillery operation. He kept the distillery afloat through Prohibition, through the Great Depression, the floods that they had, and even World War II. And we can't forget the horse and jockey bottle stoppers either, guys. That was part of the equation. We all know that those bottle toppers, each one represents a stage of a horse race. That's paying homage to the Kentucky horse racing situation they have down there. And each horse topper spells out the word Blanton's, Blantons, and you collect the full set. And like I said, they've got that horse culture down in Kentucky. It's a big heritage down there in Kentucky. If you go to Woodford, by the way, and check out Woodford, you drive right through some of those horse country, those fields. It's absolutely gorgeous. Bring your camera. Anyway, just side note. It's kind of fun that that Blanton's pays special attention to even those littlest details there on the bottle. Shows that those kind of things really matter. So, Elmer T. Lee, Colonel Blanton, Warehouse H, the whole legacy, that's proof that respect, hard work, and a little creativity can leave a mark that lasts decades. So yeah, it's big stuff, this Blanton's. I think you can really sum it all up like this. It's the first single barrel bourbon. It was released commercially in 1984. It was created by Elmer T. Lee at Buffalo Trace. Originally, it was marketed as a premium bourbon when that really wasn't the norm. And the horse and jockey stopper thing, it really accidentally became a collector obsession. And fun fact, if you collect all the letters from the bottle toppers and you send them into Buffalo Trace Distillery, they will mount them onto a barrel stave and they will do it for you. It looks very cool and they will ship it back to you. They'll do it for the low, low price of $0 hairs. Say what? 0 US American dollars, guys. That is an amazing thing that Buffalo Trace will do for you. We got to give them a round of applause. Now, I want to see if their bourbon lives up to the legend. Now, you guys know as much as I have respect for these pioneers in whiskey. I'm still going to taste and review, and I'm going to give you all the things impartially. It's going to be honest here. There's going to be no bullshit. It's going to be straightforward, just like always. And so you know these samples came from a trusted friend. These did not come from the distillery or any liquor store. I did not get paid to review it, nor will I ever. So I'm going to blind these today, and which I've got to say, it's been a long time since I put either of these bourbons in my mouth. So it's going to be a for real blind tasting for me, and I'm excited kind of to refresh my memory about what these bad boys bring to the table. Are they as good as everybody says? Is it worth spending this much extra money for a horsey topper and the flex of having this stuff on your shelf? Well, let's find out, whiskey freaks. Let's do this thing. Oh, and real quick, I should mention the original Blanton single barrel. It comes in at 93 proof. We are not focused on that one today, but I wanted to mention it so there's no confusion. And here, guys, here is a fun fact. Like I said, you may learn something today, and I think you will. At least I did. This kind of blew my mind, actually. I did not know this. I figured that Sazerac, they own Buffalo Trace now, and well, a bunch of stuff, actually. So I assumed they owned Blanton's. Well, I was wrong. Blanton's isn't owned by Sazerac. Yeah, I know, right? It's made by Buffalo Trace. It's made by Buffalo Trace, but the brand is not held by them. So here's that story real quick. It's a long story. I'm going to break it down in 1 minute, I promise. Now, I always say on here, you're going to learn something. You're learning something. And here we go. So, bourbon was in a serious slump during the 80s. Think some of that Four Roses crap they were putting out back in the 80s. A lot of people were putting out really garbage bourbon back then. In 1983, the company by the name of Age International, they stepped in and acquired the Albert B. Blanton Distillery, along with the Blanton's brand and a few others. Now, this Age International was founded by bourbon veterans Ferdy Falk and Robert Baranaskas. They were former CEO and president of Fleischmann's, and you might know that name Fleischmann's because I'm sure your wife does. Fleischmann's is a yeast company. Now, these dudes decided to strike out on their own, and less than a decade later, they sold part of the company to Japan's Takara Shuzo Company, who eventually bought the rest for $20 million, giving Falk and Baranaskas a very tidy payout. Now, Takara later sold the distillery itself to Sazerac, but here's the kicker, here's the twist. When they sold the distillery to Sazerac, Age International brands, including Blanton's, were kept. But good news for Sazerac, they've retained exclusive rights to distill Blanton's, and they continue to do so to this day at the Buffalo Trace Distillery. So, I mean, they don't even own the brand anymore, but yet it's kind of goodwill them doing the horses on the stave thing. I think that's cool. It's fun as hell. It's free. I mean, after you pay a fortune for the bottles, it's kind of the least they can do, but it is very cool, and it makes for a cool decoration in the man cave. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Buffalo Trace. And you know I'm hard on Buffalo Trace from time to time. I mean, I think Traveler, think that garbage that they made. I'm going to talk about Millennium. I'm never going to stop talking about that, guys. But I'm going to call balls and strikes. This to me is a home run, and I really appreciate what Buffalo Trace does there. I have never collected all the horsey staves. I only have 3 toppers, and I'm not mailing them anywhere. So what kind of Blantons are out there? Today we're going to talk about gold and straight from the barrel, but there's original, or what you call regular Blantons at 93 proof. I mentioned that, and believe it or not, they've also got, don't know why they do this, but they've got an 80 proof Blantons called Special Reserve. They're all single barrels, but yet they're all different. Now, there are some similarities between both of these single barrel straight bourbon whiskeys. Of course, they both come out of Warehouse H, which, by the way, I was thinking, how many barrels do they actually have in Warehouse H? I mean, you'd have to have thousands, right? Well, good news. I did some digging, and it turns out there are around 16,000 barrels in Warehouse H. So that's why there's a limit on it, and that's why you pay more for it. Well, also the horsey toppers. And, well, there's crazy people. But the scarcity of the product really does impact what you'll pay, and this is a perfect example of that. If you think about it, how many barrels are aging in Kentucky of bourbon? I think the number is right around 16 million barrels aging in Kentucky right this moment. That's just Kentucky. That's the entire state. And you only have 16,000 barrels of Blanton's aging. So it just makes sense to me that scarcity is kind of in play here. So both gold and straight from the barrel, they come out of Warehouse H. They share the same mash bill, which is the super secret Buffalo Trace mash bill number 2. And that mash bill is corn, rye, malted barley. And the exact percentages are not provided by the good folks at Buffalo Trace, but we know since it uses Buffalo Trace mash bill number 2, which is said to be their higher rye mash bill, it's most likely around 12 to 15% rye. Now, gold is anywhere from 6 to 8 years old, and in some cases they say it's up to 10 years old. And they say that's because they don't age to age, they age to a certain taste or flavor profile. Straight from the barrel, it's about the same age, but the difference there is it's a single barrel bourbon, just like the other Blantons, but it's bottled at barrel proof, meaning each bottle comes straight from the barrel without dilution. It's also unfiltered, which is amazing, so it's the more potent offering of Blantons. Now, where can I get these coveted bottles, you ask? Well, gold is available both in the United States in limited supply and also internationally. You can see that at like the international airports and things like that, but you're gonna pay. Last I checked, MSRP is about $129.99, but you're gonna pay somewhere between $130 to $200 for that bad boy. Straight from the barrel is kind of the same way, but you'll pay, I think MSRP is about $160 right now, but you'll never pay less than $175 or maybe $225. Anyway, that's even if you can find it. I'm grateful that I got these samples. I did not have to pay for them. And you got to keep this in mind, guys. They've got to be aged the right amount, and there's only 16,000 barrels to choose from at any one time. So it really, and I never thought I'd say these words, but it really makes sense to me now why they're so damn expensive and why they truly are the epitome of the word scarcity. And pay special attention. This is a word to the wise. Pay special attention when you're buying these. Blanton's typically comes in 2 different bottle sizes, actually. Didn't know that, huh? 750 milliliter here in the United States market and 700 milliliter for the international market. So Gold Edition and Straight from the Barrel are especially rare in that 750. So if you're hunting one down, expect to see the 700 more often. So in the spirit of saving time, let's cut the history lesson. I think I'm done with all of that crap. And you've got enough deets. I mean, right now we would just want to learn, how does it taste? Now, what I've always heard, and remember, it's been a few years since I've had either one of these. Now, what I've always heard, and remember, it's been a few years since I've had either one of these. I've heard that gold is supposed to be a bit more refined and polished. And Straight from the Barrel, well, it's supposed to be more raw, more loud and intense. Let's see if that actually shows up in this blind tasting. Now, I've randomized these pours and I've labeled them 1 on my left and 2 on my right. And I've got them in my favorite St. Louis Bourbon Society Glencairns, so I'm all set. So I've got 2 samples here. The first one, again, I don't know which one of these it is, but I'm going to tell you that the 2 samples I did have. The first one is Blanton's Gold, and it comes in at, of course, 103 proof because they always come in at 103 proof. Its dump date was January 20th, 2023. Of course, it's from Warehouse H. It's from Rick number 8, barrel number 149, bottle number 77, if you need to know that kind of stuff. The other sample that I have is straight from the barrel, and it was dumped February 7th, 2022. Of course, it's from Warehouse H as well, Rick 30, barrel 402, yada, yada, yada. And it comes in at 126.1 proof.
Woo, doggy!
So I've got the 2 Glencairns in front of me here, labeled 1 and 2. I don't know which is which. I'm going to go back and forth here from glass 1 and 2. That's how I do it. You do it your way. I'm not your mom. I want to see if I can identify which is which and then decide which is better and which one I'd actually pay for if I was, a trust fund baby. So first I want to talk about the color. You guys know if you listen to the podcast, you know what I always say. Sometimes the color in your glass, it can give you an idea about the depth of flavors you're about to put in your mouth. Not in the bottle. You don't want to look at the color in a bottle, the label, the light, all that kind of stuff can impact how you see what's inside that bottle. So you got to pour it in your Glencairn first. And the color, in many cases, is going to give you that idea. It's true a lot of the time. It's not always true, but it's enough of the time that I mention it every single time here. And so I mention it today. So let's look at the colors. It should be easy to tell any differences, right? I got the same amount of bourbon in each glass, the same lighting down here in the bunker. It's like the CIA interrogation room down here. So let me take a look at these. Yeah, number 1 is slightly, and when I say slightly, I mean a tinge, a hair, just a smidgen darker than glass number 2. Like almost barely any difference here. But like I said, I've got them poured exactly to the same level, the same amount in the Glencairn. So I give the color to glass number 1, and I'd call glass number 1 a slightly darker copper color than glass 2. It's not a it's not a dark copper really, but it is a copper. Glass 1 is slightly darker. Is that confusing enough? All right. So when I'm evaluating a whiskey or a bourbon, I want to take a note of it, right? I want to make notes. And so I mention this quite often too. Write this stuff down when you taste. I write mine down in a Heaven Hill notebook I got during a tasting years and years ago. And then later I transfer it to my Word document that I can always access on my phone. It's a great way to follow your journey in whiskey and compare how you felt about something in the past. And I've often found years later, or sometimes even just months later, I might feel differently about a pour now than I did back then. You'll want to track this kind of thing. You want to make good notes. And believe me, when you spend real money at the bar or the liquor store, you don't want to come home with something you tried last year and you forgot that you hated. So keep track of it, get a notebook, enough said. So glass 1, let me nose it. Okay, so right off the bat, there's this rich caramel note. And the alcohol, the ethanol, right? I know it's ethanol. The ethanol coming off here, it's noticeable to me, but it's not bothersome. It's saying, I'm some serious ass Blantons here, but I'm not telling you my name just yet. And along with that, it's a beautiful caramel note. It's a dark, it's kind of a dark chocolatey note too. And that citrusy note's in here too. Yeah, and there's a good bit of what I'd call toffee. I don't often get to say toffee when I'm tasting bourbons, to be honest. I mean, if we're all being honest about it. And it makes me think back, boy, that wind is blowing. It makes me think back to the days when I was a kid where they had those Skor candy bars, the SKOR. They had those, and then they had the Heath toffee candy bars. The Heaths were my favorite. This reminds me of a Heath toffee candy bar. It's got that chocolate and that crunchy toffee in it. That's what I'm thinking here. Let me get one last nose of glass number 1. Yeah, these are some deep notes in here. This glass, the notes are pouring out of this glass. They're thick, and there's like this dark fruit note or maybe like a raisin note coming out of here as well. This is very nice. I am loving the nose on glass 1. All right, I'm going to stick my nose in glass number 2. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot going on here right away too. There's this dark jammy fruit note, almost like crushed mixed berries. I had if you listen to an episode, I think it was last year actually, I had this mixed berry spread that I got at Target. This smells like that, like crushed mixed berry spread. Or think back to those holiday fruit cakes. God, my grandpa used to eat those. We used to make fun of it. They looked gross, but he ate them. That fruit cake type of, the holiday fruit cake type of thing. I don't know. Does anybody else remember those? I remember them. And that's kind of what I'm getting here. They didn't look good, but they smelled good. Okay, there's a little bit of a citrusy note here too. It's not as pronounced as that citrusy note I was getting on glass number 1. But that's something I think you almost always get with Blantons. I reviewed Blantons about 1.5 years ago. Again, the 93 proof, the original or the standard Blantons, you get that same note here. And it's honestly one of my favorite things about it, that orange zesty note. Let me nose it one more time. Glass number 2. Yeah, there's also this sweet vanilla thing going on too, and just the slightest bit of toasted oak here too. Now, I forgot, the ethanol on glass 2. It's vaguely there. I mean, like almost nothing on the nose as far as alcohol is concerned. And I can tell the proof point is pretty high, but it's not harsh. And at this point, I'm not even sure what it is yet, but it's got that classic Blanton style for sure. Let me get another nosing on it. Just one more nosing on glass number 2. Yeah, lots of things going on here. It's got vanilla. It's got the caramel you'd expect from Blanton's. Now, glass 2, which I'm holding, is not as complex on the nose as glass number 1. So I think I can say that at this point. I mean, it leads me to think one thing, but I'm really kind of withholding my judgment for now. Now, let's get a taste of glass number 1 and get this thing moving. And remember, glass number 1 has the darker color too, so again, I'm not calling it yet, but if the past steers me right, I kind of have an idea at least already, but I'm not really going to spoil the fun. Let me take a sip of glass number 1. Yeah, wow. It's got this richness to it. And right away, I can feel this might be the higher proof point Blantons. This might be the straight from the barrel. It's hitting pretty strongly, or it's hitting bigly, right? It's this, but the good news here is it's this rich caramel bomb kind of note. That's the first thing that hits me, and it hits quick. It hits your tongue with the slightest stinging there on your tongue, the slightest amount of burn, but it's really kind of fading away pretty super quick. At least the burn or that stinging, right? The flavors are hanging on. And the flavors, it's this rich, dark caramel. Let me get another sip real quick. I'm getting vanilla and that kind of a dark fruit or like a raisiny note. It's in here too. Let me get one more sip of glass number 1. Yeah, this is very interesting. It's pretty dry on the finish. And it finishes with this strong oaky note too that's actually quite nice. And there's that citrusy note I love, like an orange zest. It's the best I can describe that is like, yeah, orange zest. That's about the best I can do with that one. And this thing is lingering pretty long and it's pretty hot. Not going to lie. This one is hanging on. I can feel it in my throat. And it's pretty dry. And the mouthfeel on glass 1, I didn't say anything about that. Sorry, guys. It's got this beautiful creaminess to it. It's coating the mouth, it's coating the tongue, and again, like I said, when it coats the tongue, it burns the tongue a little bit on your first sip. That kind of subsides on the second sip, but your first sip is going to hit you. Anyway, let me take a sip of glass 2. Wow, yeah, there is a pretty big difference, guys. And what I mean is the mouthfeel on 2 is just slightly thinner than glass 1, which makes me think kind of what I figured from the color and the nose, like the ethanol off each of these. Number 2 it's still got a terrific mouthfeel. I mean, it's oily, but side by side with the other glass, you can definitely tell the difference here. So, tasting notes on glass 2. Wow, there's a pretty big difference here, guys. And what I mean is the mouthfeel is thinner on glass number 2 than the first glass, which kind of makes me think what I figured from the color and the nose, like the ethanol the ethanol off of each of these. I was getting more ethanol off of glass 1 than glass 2, which would kind of lead me to believe higher proof point on 1 than 2. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I mean, think glass 1, but less intense. Yeah, I mean, that's the best way I can say it. And I know that sounds goofy, right? But I'm getting caramel. I'm getting vanilla, of course. But I'm not really getting that awesome toffee candy bar note I got off of glass 1. That's probably the one thing that's missing for me in glass 2. Let me get another sip real quick. Okay, there's that dark fruit note in here, but it's just not I have to keep saying it's just not as intense a flavor as out of glass 1. And the finish, I'd call it longish. Glass 1 went on forever, and it's pretty close to the same type of thing going on here with glass 2, but it is not as long of a finish. And I didn't feel any sting in the tongue, and I'm only getting a slight warmth in my throat as I'm sipping on this one. Now, both of these are very sweet. If you like a sweet bourbon, then straight from the barrel and gold would be good for you guys. I mean, definitely. And I love it. I love them both. And I love a stronger flavor profile too. I mean, I love me some rye and I love me some deeper tasting notes. But this sugary sweetness here I'm getting from both of these Blantons, it's pretty awesome too. So you're probably wondering which is which, right? Which one is Blanton straight from the barrel and which one is Blanton's Gold? Well, I'll have the reveal right after this brief message. All right, whiskey freaks, let's be real. This podcast ain't free to make. And my wife, well, she's got questions about where all the money's going. So if you've ever enjoyed an episode here on the Blind Tasting Podcast and thought, man, this guy deserves a drink, well, now here's your chance. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/blindtastingpodcast. Toss a few bucks in the tip jar. It'll keep the podcast rolling, and it helps me prove to my wife that somebody out there thinks this was a good idea. Thanks for the support, whiskey freaks. That's buymeacoffee.com/blindtastingpodcast. Just a buck or two if you love what you're hearing. So appreciated, guys. Cheers to all of you. Now let's get back to the bourbon. Okay, guys, so first I want to take my guess at it, and I really think I've got it pegged. I think I had it pegged from basically the color and the nose. That doesn't mean I'm a guru. It doesn't mean I know what I'm doing, because I really honestly don't. But right off the bat, glass number 1, it's just got the slightest edge in color. And glass 1, as far as that alcohol or ethanol on the nose, it just slightly hits harder than glass 2, in my opinion. In fact, there's almost zero alcohol in glass 2. And the flavors in glass 1 are just slightly what I'd call richer, or, here we go again, more intense than glass 2. And for those reasons, I say glass 1 is straight from the barrel and glass 2 is Blanton's Gold. So am I right? Let me take a look under them. Yes, sir. Look, guys, I'm not a pro. I'm doing this for fun. I'm doing it for my enjoyment and hopefully yours too. But the differences here between these two whiskeys, like I said, the tasting notes are very similar. Other than that, dang, Glass One, it gives me that Heath candy bar memory. That's fantastic. But they both had this nice caramel. And again, one I think was a caramel bomb. Number two was just caramelicious. You know what I'm saying? But Glass One just had a deeper flavor. And Glass One also had a slightly better mouthfeel, and it had a longer finish. Not a lot longer. Now, that being said, the finish did have more burn that lingered longer than Glass 2. But what's the takeaway today, guys? You know, at the beginning of this episode, I said I wanted to answer the question. And I said, let me ask you a question. Remember that? And I asked the question, does more Blantons actually make Blantons better? And I told you what I meant was, what I mean now is, does higher proof, rarer, more expensive versions of the same bourbon, Blantons, does that automatically equal better bourbon drinking experience? Well, clearly, at least to me, straight from the barrel was a better pour. But you're going to pay for it. And that's a decision you're going to have to make. Is it worth the extra cash? Well, for me, the answer is absolutely yes, it is. I feel like the depth of flavors, the richer tasting notes, and just the sheer mouthfeel experience, for me, it just pushed straight from the barrel over the top. And by more than just a couple clicks, guys, I'd say straight from the barrel was more luscious. Is that okay to say? Luscious? I think so. It was more luscious. It was richer. It was just overall a better sip for me. Now, don't get me wrong. Gold was delicious. It just, side by side with straight from the barrel, it just had no chance. I mean, think about it. It's 103 proof, and we're looking at 126.1. Now, if you're not into higher proof points, well, clearly, there's your answer, right? But if you love both, go with the higher proof point. And I kind of feel like I've had a revelation today. And not like a go to church type of thing, but more like, hey, dumbass, you prejudged a thing and you got it wrong. And what I mean by that is, all I can think about is, I've been wrong over the years to complain about plans. Yeah, let me explain. Yeah, I'm eating a bit of crow here, I guess. You've heard me on here bitching and moaning about how hard it is to get Blantons and all that, and I think really it's more than that. If you really stop and think about it, and this is where it hit me, when I looked into how many barrels were in warehouse aging. If there were only 16,000 barrels, then Blanton's is naturally limited by, reality. It's not all the marketing bullshit. It's not completely all marketing hype. You can't bottle more Blantons than the barrels you've laid down, no matter how much demand spikes, no matter how much people want. And because Blanton's is a single barrel offering, it isn't batch. You can't batch it to stretch out the supply. You can't proof it different ways. It is what it is. So there's no blending trick to increase the number of bottles of Blanton's, even though you've got that demand. And when you think about what warehouse age means and has meant to the brand and to the legacy over the years, or, I guess you could call it a shtick. I guess they could put it in another warehouse too, right, guys? But warehouse age is where it's at. It's where it's laid down. It's where it's aged. And if Blanton's truly depends on that specific warehouse for its profile, then expanding production isn't as simple as just throwing barrels into another rickhouse without changing the whole dynamic of the product. Think about it. Blanton's was never designed to be a mass market bourbon. It just became wildly popular later, which makes the existing production seem what I call scarcity, even if it wasn't intended to be scarce. Let's think about this another way. I like cars. I like the Ford Mustang GT500. Or think about any premium muscle car, right? People call Blanton's manufactured scarcity, but it's really more like a Shelby Mustang. Now, Ford makes tons of Mustangs, but not every Mustang is a GT500. And there are real limits on how many they can build without changing what makes it so special. Blanton's is just the same way. The single barrel, the one warehouse thing, the limited supply. Guys, the demand just grew faster than the production ever could. And Blanton's didn't become famous because of flavor alone. Think about the packaging with the horsies, right? And the sheer scarcity. These Blantons I tasted today, both of these, they're awesome. The gold and the straight from the barrel. And there's a lot of merit here that they'd be worth paying that much for either one, right? But for me, my money is on the straight from the barrel. I just believe you get that elevated experience. And yeah, guys, you're going to pay for it. I mean, that's just the way it is. I don't even see that changing. I know with the landscape we have right now with the supply glut and the fact that they're putting out more limited releases and yada, yada, yada. I don't think you're going to see this change because of the few things I've mentioned here on the podcast today. It's scarce. It's limited supply. There's a certain way it's done, a certain place it's done, and the price is going to stay about the same, if you can even find it. But when you do find it, you're going to thank me later. Look, there may not be any value here, right? Most of the time I talk value pours on this podcast. You're not going to find this one on clearance. And you can't pretend the gold is better. Straight from the barrel, it just outshines it, even if the price is way more. And before I end this one, guys, this first episode of 2026, I want to give a shout out to all the folks. You know them. I got to give a shout out to the farmers, the distillery production guys and gals, the warehouse workers, the bottlers, and the truck drivers. They're the ones that make it happen. So cheers to all of them. Thanks for listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your #1 attitudinal bourbon destination.